Welcome to the Leadership Labs with DeepRec.ai, a podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of deep tech entrepreneurship, company founders, and venture capitalists. I'm your host, Anthony Kelly, and I'm thrilled to have you join us in this exciting journey. In each episode, we explore the minds behind groundbreaking technologies, the visionaries who dare to push the boundaries of innovation, and the investors who fuel the growth of tomorrow's game changers. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this installment of the Leadership Labs with DeepRec. Today's guest is Leopold, not also known as Leo. He's a principal investor at Project A Ventures. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what Project A Ventures and Leo look for in a technical team and founders. Really good examples of how you can understand your product customer fit, your experience product fit, and sort of a go-to market strategy that they really look for to be part of the Project A Ventures portfolio. So Leo, great to have you on the show.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, looking forward to have a conversation on these topics today.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, look, before we jump into it, Leo, why don't we go back to the start, where it all started with you? You know, how did you find yourself being a principal investor in Project A? What's your background been to get into this sort of position?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think as a lot of people in the venture ecosystem and also on the VC side, I rather stumbled into this job a little bit coincidentally. So yeah, I've not slept in Project A bad sheets all my youth, but it was a little bit more random. I mean, so originally my background is in economics, sort of quant finance. So we did a lot of let's say more sort of theoretical, also data stuff, a lot of around statistics, econometrics, and so on. And then I actually segued into the whole tech industry through an internship at back then a sort of crypto infrastructure player. Before that, I did a short-term stint for a sort of very data-driven financial investor that was trying to sort of trade global macro cycles. So I don't know, derive some data-driven signals on where the economy in, I don't know, Brazil is for the next 6 months, and then I had to invest on that. But yeah, it wasn't obvious to me that I would join a venture capital firm later on. I mean, it was just a little bit random. So they were actually looking for a sort of an emergency intern hire, and I was available. Heard through my network, and then basically never left after that internship. So that was end of 2018. Feels like ages ago by now.
Good. Nice story there. I think it's one of those, yeah, you're right, that people always tend to just fall into. What about Project A Ventures? I guess I know they're one of the most well-known ventures in Germany. I guess if you don't know them, how would you explain them or tell your friends what they do?
Yeah. I mean, the very obvious tagline that's not very differentiated for any VC firm is, I guess, partnering with the best founders, tackling the biggest problems in this world at the earliest stages. I mean, but yeah, I mean, this is very generic, of course, but I mean, I think just a whole sort of standard VC side. Yeah, we have an early stage fund with generalist investors, invest in all kinds of software businesses, sometimes also in things that are a little bit more hardware related, more sort of closer to R&D. But what really sets us apart from other firms is that we have a very strong hands-on operational approach. So next to the investment side and the investment team where I specifically work in, we have a much larger team of hands-on operators. So basically, I think it's a team of 120 full-time in-house employees by now who work in all kinds of operation areas from marketing and sales on the commercial side to product and tech engineering, but also support roles. So we have a big data analytics engineering science team, So I think around 15 recruiters, HR, branded communications. So yeah, really a full stack team that can work with our portfolio companies also on a very operational level. Obviously, apart from the work that we do with founders on a more strategic and board level. In any case, yeah, I mean it's sort of fully optional, that offering. So yeah, our founders are free to decide if they want to work with us. Also more hands on, but we think sometimes it just makes sense to offer something else than just sort of capital and high level strategic advice. And yeah, I think this model has proven itself very successful for us.
Yeah, because I mean, you see it a lot now, right? About data-driven VCs going to be like the differentiator in the market, as in how they look to do their deals, how they look to help the companies that they're investing in. And I think I remember it was about 5 years ago when I hosted an event in your office in Berlin, and one of your heads of data science helped me arrange it. Um, like, I mean, it's a big talking point now, right? But you guys were doing it 5 years ago. I see a lot of reports coming around LinkedIn. Was that was that intentional to be ahead of the curve, or do you think it was just sort of how the market played out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's basically, it just goes back into the roots of the company in a way. So most founding partners of Project A spent some time with Rocket Internet before, and I mean, I guess most listeners of the podcast are quite aware of what they've been doing, and I mean, they've done great work for specifically the Berlin ecosystem. Yeah, over the last 10 to 15 years. But there are also some things that they didn't like about the model too much. So we basically started out initially with quite a sizable team, I think with at least 40, 50 people on the operation side. And then we tweaked the model over time. So initially we were also doing some company building here and there, and then yeah, basically tweaked that model into what we now call this operational VC approach. And yeah, I mean, while I think there's definitely a lot of buzz around yeah, companies, other VCs also operating in a more data-driven way, I think really it's sort of the scale of what we can offer in terms of support, not only on the data side, but really just across the board, is probably, at least in Europe, quite unique. Yeah, I think in the US, I mean, obviously in Reason Horowitz, they employ a pretty substantial operations team as well, that works also slightly different. Unfortunately, we don't have the assets under management for us to yeah, parallel that, but yeah, would love to at least get there at some point.
Yeah, I mean they're a monster. I mean, what are they? Top one, two VC size globally?
I think so. I mean, I don't exactly know, but they've definitely scaled their funds quite a bit.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, I think there's always the question like, what's your core business model as a fund, right? Because you get money obviously from just managing more money for other people and the sort of management fee. But yeah, I mean, I think the end goal for most funds is also to generate amazing performance and then get some carry, some yeah, sort of some upside from good performance of the funds as well. Yeah, but that's, I guess, a very sort of VC fund strategy specific discussion. We probably don't need to get into.
yeah. Well, look, what I do want to get into is the sort of the venture partnership. As you said, you want to partner with people, you want to make them successful. Um, let's go quite open here. Let's talk about the types of investments you make first, and then we'll go into like the type of teams, the type of people. But yeah, I mean, where do you sit on the spectrum in terms of like size, tickets?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we are an early stage investor, so basically pre-seed to Series A, with yeah, then roughly initial investment sizes between 1 and 10 million euros. Definitely on yeah. So, I mean, as a generalist fund, you look into all kinds of industries and business models. but we operate around what we call deep dives, and that is sort of personal focus areas that we pick that we think are particularly interesting. And within these, we definitely like to get in also earlier than the Series A. So definitely pre-seed, seed, sort of pre-product, pre-traction. That's what we also feel very comfortable with. So basically, the early stage is just investing into a team. And what where I spend a lot of time on is sort of development tools, data infrastructure, anything that's a bit more technical and infrastructure heavy within B2B software, I would say. Of course, you also like applied, vertical SaaS or also applied data topics. But so I would say what my personal focus is as a team. We are, of course, broader than that, but I would say that we like to specialize quite deeply in a wide range of different topics, and then also just leave we don't think structurally as
So yeah, so let's talk about the process. Like, you must view hundreds of potential companies, potential portfolio businesses per month, quarter, right? What makes, from a very simple setup, if we talk about the founding team, the technical teams, what do you look for in them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say generally, I mean, contacting investors, first of all, I think we do see quite a lot of businesses, of course. And I think what's always great is if you manage to get some like an introduction to us through the network, or so. If I'm just speaking about the sort of the way of contacting. I mean, I also respond to a lot of like cold emails or LinkedIn outreaches, and if I think something is really interesting, I think we also very still very likely to invest. But I think to get a more thorough sort of first look from us as investors, it's just always great if you can get a warm introduction through your network. That's typically just one of the highest sort of value signals the company is also, or the founding team also, is has a great network, as well connected, and that they know sort of how the fundraising process ideally works. And then I think it's very tough to say. I mean, obviously, it's not rocket science to say that I don't know, ex senior Google engineers probably will be able to raise funding, but I think beyond these obvious signals, to me, there isn't really a lot of things that I, at least on paper from a team, really require. I think that, also the best amazing founders sometimes have a little bit of odd backgrounds that are just not obvious based on their LinkedIn profile also. So then it's for me more about how well can they communicate what they're doing, what's the problem that they're solving. And I generally think, specifically for very technical founders, it's just always great if they still have proximity to the customers and to the. I mean, it can also obviously often be an end user who you're solving a problem for, but it's still remarkable to see how many technical teams just think very sort of solution oriented and think I've built this and this is amazing, but maybe they haven't validated that that's an actual problem for a lot of people, or that there aren't any other great solutions out there. And I think that's really just the basics. Is to have a very clear way of articulating why are you doing what for whom in a way. And that's definitely something I think I've seen at the best teams.
Yeah, I think it was over the last week or so on LinkedIn. I seen someone post about the startups coming out in from people doing like business courses in AI. I think it was like 23 startups have come from founders who are from a business course from TUM. Quite mixed reviews in the comments. A lot of people saying, "Oh, great, this is what we need." More people that don't understand the technology trying to build something. But ultimately, right, there's an element of, if you're a small team, you want balance in the founder's skill sets, like something like that. Do you see an AI business degree as a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean it's all about balance. I think as you mentioned. I mean I think you can probably also build a great business without having the subject matter expertise in AI yourself. But I think it at least if you want to build a business that has venture scale, right, that has a potential to become a one or multiple times a unicorn, then I think it's probably tough if you just have expertise in the sort of top layer business domain and workflow. But I think you definitely need to have someone on the team who has an understanding of, especially if you're building vertical software, of what is the specific use case in the industry, what is their specific workflow. And I think through the success and also just the high quality of large pre-trained models, I think that some of the execution risk in building a data-driven product has definitely decreased. But I think that still, in order to also just use an endpoint, I think you still need to have a lot of understanding of how it actually works under the hood, and also you need to be able to choose different choose the right endpoints. And I think it's not that straightforward that you can just with a sort of more simple business degree build a gigantic business, I think. But it's all about balance, as you mentioned. So
Yeah.
You should have both in your team in some way. And I mean, that doesn't mean, like, just thinking important, it doesn't mean that, as a technical founder, you need to have a business degree. I don't think that these things are super hard to pick up, right? I think you just need to be interested and willing, to get into those things. Like, okay, so how do I think about customer economics, right? Like, how much money can I make with one customer over a couple of years? How much money and time can I invest in to acquire him or her? I mean, it's very simple things, right? I mean, but I think you need to be willing to get into it and to be close to your customers and the commercial side. But by no means you need to have an MBA or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, in the tech space, right, we see majority of businesses being founded with a whole tech founding team, right? And sometimes, and I don't know, you can almost call it startup politics, right? Some person has got to take on this challenge, right? Customer fit, market fit, product fit. But they're also all very reluctant to give away the tech side, and it starts to be that if there's three people, two of them are 50% on the tech, 50% on the product, and then ultimately it's almost failing on the product side, right? Because you never hire someone to do half a job. So why put yourself forward for half a job? But I mean, look, that's one example of things where I've known from my experience of things to go wrong. We spoke about, like, there's no golden formula to make it go right. What do you see, I suppose, in general are the most common, I don't want to say failures, but let's say lack of skills that founders would have from a tech startup?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to be able to strike a very good balance between listening to feedback and listening to your customers, listening to your end users, listening to just getting a product out there, gathering feedback, and being able to digest that in a productive manner. I think on the other extreme, of course, I think you need to also still have some fundamental beliefs or hypotheses of what you think is true and what the direction that you want to go into. I would say probably more startups are not successful because they are not listening enough to feedback than listening too much to feedback. And I mean, it also happens, right, that you lose direction and you just go into a lot of different directions all the time, and you lack some consistency of the plan that you're trying to realize. But I think it's more often not being early enough out in the market and really challenging yourself, and also taking your ego out of that equation in a way, right? Because it's that some things don't work out, or you need to adjust and the direction. I think if you look into any sort of very successful tech company, I think that has happened dozens of times in their history, and they have been successful because they adjusted to whatever they've been hearing from the market. And I think that's a very natural path, and there's no need to be stubborn or put your ego into the way there. If whatever hypothesis you had might change over time.
Yeah, good. I know. I think there's some very famous, non-tech pivots, right? I think Lamborghinis used to do tractors, right? you know, got insulted because I think the guy from Ferrari insulted him, and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to start making supercars now." Um, Wrong reasons, but still a reason for it. Sales and marketing at the start, and I guess this is going to be a personal preference question. I would say, do you feel that are you more successful hiring an experienced salesperson, or do you think one of the founders should really own this from the start as well and try and move into that? Because as you said, close to the customer feedback, will an external salesperson really understand what is even complexly possible with your solution with given feedback?
Yeah. I mean, I think early on, so I would definitely not recommend hiring someone senior, because typically, I mean, either you partner as sort of a co-founder relationship, and then ideally that person should also have some domain expertise in the product, and then I would describe the setup probably differently than what you were just thinking of. But I think hiring someone senior is sometimes even a bit of the worst thing you can do, because they typically want to hire and manage other people, and they need to have a scaled team and practices in place. And I mean, until you have something like, I mean, it's also overused term like product market fit, but I would more say until you really know what's the problem that I'm solving for who exactly, and what's their use case. Like, that's just very tough to externalize. And I think as a founder, as like in a pre-seed stage, definitely I think you need to own that conversation, because if you're a small team, it's still fairly easy, but that closing that bridge between sales and product in a way, I think that's a challenge for every tech company. And once you grow, it's organizationally more difficult. But if you're small, I think everything you do in your product, on your roadmap, should be informed by the customer discovery conversations that you're having, especially for technical products. I mean, it's not like we're always speaking of classic sales conversations and cold calling, right? I mean, it's also just sending a link to a couple of friends of yours and asking for feedback, or being active in certain communities. And I think it's very important for one of the founders to also own that process early on.
Yeah. Which takes us into where I wanted to ask specifically about that product fit, market fit, customer fit. I mean, whatever way you want to frame it, depending on the product, right? Like really getting to understanding of this, right? And this is where it comes in. You got these really talented tech people. They build this amazing software. It's all singing, it's all dancing. It can solve everything in their minds, but really there's probably elements where they can look back and say, this costs too much if we're trying to give it to a feature. There's so many little things that they can pick it about, but they're almost just looking at it as a piece of ultimate technology. Like how would you recommend someone who has like an idea, product idea, to stop thinking about ultimate technology, like this is going to solve all the problems in a particular space that I'm in? Where should they start to understand, right, this is what the people actually want, not what I think what they want?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think I already touched upon it. I mean, just getting the product out as early as possible and getting feedback from as many people as possible is, I think, very useful. I mean, this can also then be, yeah, obviously you can build an open source, for example. You can try, I think, yeah, to get just into a lot. I mean, there's a lot of great like technical communities where I think it's quite, yeah, or Hacker News, Slack communities where it's easy to get feedback. And then I think, as you mentioned, that's the most important question is then how narrow is your, or yeah, how focused are you really with your product? And because it's very easy, to solve every problem for everyone if you just make changes to the roadmap or scalable tech product, right? So you need to have some repeatability in terms of what you're solving for whom and what their problem is. And I think if that becomes too heterogeneous, I mean, it's maybe a great like service business, but it's very tough to scale this as a pure sort of product and tech company. And I think really also being realistic and honest and saying no to some potential use cases or some potential customers that just don't fall within your ideal customer profile and that just cause you to put attention on things that shouldn't be maybe highest priority at this point in time. I think that's very challenging because, of course, if you're struggling to get customers and then you have someone who's willing to pay for it, but maybe it doesn't really align with what you're trying to build, it's very challenging to say no. But I think sometimes you have to say no, or you basically take that as feedback to adjust your overall direction. But you need to have a clear direction, otherwise it gets tough.
Yeah, I've even heard of some companies, right, where they've got quite lucky early and they've managed to secure like a massive client, right? And they want them to fit the product as how they want to use it and make it like enterprise version for just them, but it's actually not having all the features that they initially anticipated. And challenges I've seen come from that is it's two teams, right? You have to split up in an enterprise team and a product team. You imagine you're a 10-person business, like you don't really have the resources to do that, but that's what happens, and that's what I've seen happen quite a bit. Um,
Yeah,
I
and I think sorry, just to jump in, and I think it even gets worse over time. If let's say you have this one customer that's like, I don't know, 5 times the size of your other customers, I mean, they will just keep wanting to have a lot of attention and you will have to tweak things. And if in the end, for whatever reason, they still churn and just decide not to use the service anymore, like also from an investor perspective, this looks quite bad, right? Because then people are asking why did they churn? Like why didn't they like it? And then you need to explain, yeah, they were actually never really the core target user and it wasn't the right use case. But that brings up so many questions,
Yeah.
yeah, which sometimes just tough from a signaling perspective for investors.
Nice. I want to ask you probably what might seem tough for a lot of people who are, possibly wanting to be speaking to you, Leo. People that want to raise that pre-seed, seed, Series A money. They've got something that they think is really good. They have maybe one or two good customers, but they almost lack like their go-to market strategy is lacking. And what I mean with that is do they actually know who their core customer is? Do they know how much, based on, let's say, the current two customers, based on size, types of companies they should be targeting, the strategies behind this, and I guess really talking about an actual growth plan to grow their market share. Like, how often do you see like a go-to market strategy like that? And I mean, if it does happen, like, I impressed because, again, appreciate tech companies generally don't have dedicated sales teams to talk through them with these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that quite often. I mean, I think I mean, I don't think it's a surprising thing, but right, but you see more teams with great products and great technology failing because they struggle to with their go-to-market strategy, and they struggle to identify the real core user group than the other way around, at least for technical products, right? I mean, it would be very weird to have a team that's building, I don't know, a developer tool, and they are great in go-to-market, but they don't have a great product. I think it's just also mirroring a lack of a lack of talent on that go-to-market side, especially for
Yeah.
very technical products, because obviously you need to know both worlds, right? Like you need to have an understanding of the business or the go to market side, but also you need to have domain expertise and and the software that you're trying to sell. I mean, it doesn't help, right? Selling a dev tool if you have experience in selling, I don't know, cars or something. Right? I mean, it's obviously very very tough. So I think that's to some degree just natural in a way. Um, Generally, I would at least try to think about. I mean, of course, there's a lot of there was a lot of hype, sort of a more bottom up and sort of product led motion, especially if you're building open source, for example. I mean, that can work really well. Just I think two things to watch out for, and that is one, that doesn't mean that you aren't doing structurally some kind of marketing and sales. I mean, if you look at also companies like Confluent, Intercom, whatever, like Slack. I mean, all these more product led companies, they still have. I mean, they have enterprise sales teams that aren't much smaller than for a HubSpot or a Salesforce. Salesforce is probably a bit extreme, but okay, building product led or bottom up doesn't mean that you just throw out some kind of technology and you wait for people to miraculously adopt it, but it also a craftsmanship in a way. It's just a different way of marketing things and selling things, and that's more community based. But I think it just doesn't mean that you shouldn't give it any attention. And I think the second one is not. You need to think about if that's actually suitable to whatever you're trying to do. I think what you see in product led or also successful open source companies is that there is both a lot of value for the end user of your tool individually, but there's also a clear path to like a team or an enterprise way of consuming it. And I think I mean that's not always the case. Also in tech teams, some things are just decided top down, right? Like, okay, this is whatever service we're using to solve that problem, and then if it's decided more top down by like a team lead, or it's more of a financial consideration, for example. I don't know if building sort of then bottom up suits that well. Um, but I mean, if you start by just thinking clearly about who is the actual buyer persona, who is the user persona, then I think that helps a lot to think about these aspects.
Yeah, I mean, there has been a massive rise in product led companies, freemium solutions. Um, I mean, they work pretty good, right? You get a lot of feedback quick. Uh, I've You can really see a difference, all right. There's a clear difference between companies that make an enterprise version or a professional version worth paying for, right? There's a lot of freemium tools out there that just, I would imagine, struggle to make money, or are just sitting there, you know. I mean, like, there's obviously a nice one. I mean, great tool. I use it all the time. But Calendly, right? It's free, but if you pay like what's it, €15 a month, you can book meetings at different times. Instead of just a 30-minute, you can book 15 in an hour. But I mean, they're trying to get you to pay for that. So, Slack and Confluence, you've just mentioned like the much different, far superior products, right? Is there anything that you need to take into consideration, would you say, if you're going to go down the road of product led growth? Like, how different does your free version of open source, let's say, or your pro version have to be for you to think, do you know what, this product has something about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tension, obviously, right? So if your open source version, for example, is just too good, in a way, it harms your commercial success. Which is a bit absurd sometimes, but that's what some companies I think struggle with quite a bit. I think, I mean, the most important things I think are being very, especially if you're building open source, being very transparent about that and very loyal in a way to the community. And I think, I mean, what works well, obviously, is to just monetize some enterprise features like single sign-on, role-based access control, auditing, logs, like all these things that just clearly an individual end user or a small company doesn't care about. I mean, I guess for a Calendly or so, that's obviously there isn't so many governance security features, as it's more on the application level. But yeah, I think then it's more a case by case decision. But I think one more thing probably to think about is it's always easier to open your product more than to close it more for the community edition.
Yeah.
So people will never complain if you give them more product for free, but going the other direction is really, really hard. Just, when initially picking a path, I think, it's easier to restrict more and then open it up over time once you feel more comfortable, instead of just throwing it out there and then gradually degrading the sort of freemium version over time.
Nice. Good advice there. Now, while we're on the topic of freemium versions, open source, we spoke before about I think it was like the rise of AI products coming to the market. And we talk about AI products, we're talking specifically large language based models. I think what, in like the last 8 months, I think there's been, let's say, for example, there's been 40 large language models legal startups founded in like the last 6 months, which is huge. Um, and I wanted to ask you, when it comes to this, how do you put a value on a product like this? If it's a large language model product, if it's based off GPT, how safe are you? What's defensible? Where do you stand?
It's it's a very valid question. I think first of all, especially in this big sort of gold rush, you're looking for especially experienced founders that also understand as a team the business domain really well. Obviously, the textbook play to build something defensible is getting access to some proprietary data sets, generating that over time in the application or through other strategies initially. I mean, while that's, I think, still very true, I think it's important to note that with the very fast advancement that we're seeing, I think the value of proprietary data just decreases gradually. Also with like single shot and few shot learning and all these concepts, and just also models becoming much better out of the box. So I think currently in the sort of exponential phase of innovation, it's tough to see where that flattens out in a way. Still, of course, the textbook case is getting access to proprietary data. And I think what's also very important is, I mean, if you're seeing how incumbents add AI functionality to their products, it's quite, I think their level of execution, their speed of execution is quite impressive overall. So I think you need to carefully think about which product categories and experiences you can really, from ground up, think new, as opposed to just innovating on a feature level, for example, compared to an existing CRM solution or so. And I mean, that's of course a little bit abstract, but I think just I wouldn't expect that any of the incumbents are unable to add AI functionality to their products. I would just think about what is the fundamental new logic with which you can rebuild this software category. That on one hand, and on the other hand, I think just doing sometimes maybe also something that's a bit of a boring business or not non-obvious business, but then just utilizing AI to the fullest internally, to be more efficient in terms of customer success, customer support, doing just a lot more with a small tech team, because you leverage co-pilots and whatever to the fullest. I think that's actually also a very interesting business strategy that's a little bit less obvious than building the next sort of legal chatbot assistant. But I think that's actually very, very interesting because especially for larger companies and especially for non-tech companies, I think it's very tough to make that cultural shift internally. To just say, okay, we'll get rid of, I don't know, whatever X% of my customer support workforce because I'm just automating all of that. And I think that's also a very interesting angle for anyone considering to start a business.
Nice, good. Thank you, Leo. Ready to close it off with some quick fire questions? That's cool. Question one: a book, content, or podcast, don't have to be all three. It could maybe just one, but anything of the content form that you'd recommend to listeners and other entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think I really like. There's a newsletter from Ed Zim. He's a partner at Boldstar. That's a US-based venture capital fund, and he writes a lot about enterprise go-to-market and developer first products and categories. And I think just a general, like a lot of things that we also talked about today. I think for anyone who wants to build in that space and is technical, I think he does a great job on a weekly basis to gather some thoughts on how that can work out. I think that's a really good one.
Nice. For yourself, if I was to say 3 non-negotiables, and when I say non-negotiables, I mean things that you do to set yourself up for success every day, what would your 3 non-negotiables be?
Yeah, I think just similar actually as with founders. I think challenging your own beliefs and views and hypotheses in a way on a daily basis. I mean, we see tons of a lot of companies, and obviously we sometimes make wrong or sometimes decisions that look like they were wrong afterwards. And I think it's just always important to not be too stubborn to change your opinion on something and to admit that you're wrong. And I think it's just this constant learning from great entrepreneurs, constantly challenging your own views. I think that's something that I think is really important as an investor.
Nice. And the last one to close it off, Leo. If you could go back, do it all again, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things, I think I would do most things quite similarly. So not, I don't know if that was the answer you were hoping for, but
I don't know what I was expecting, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's no. I think in the obviously some minor things I would do differently, but no. I think in the grand scheme, I'm very happy and that I have the pleasure to work with a great team and with great with great founders on a daily basis, and learn from them that are so much. Who are so much smarter in whatever they do, which I think is always the case, and that's a very privileged position. And I'm happy to do what I do.
Love it. Leo, that takes us up for time. So for everyone listening, this is the Leadership Labs with DeepRec.ai. Today's guest was Leo, Principal Investor from Project A Ventures. Leo, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony.
That concludes another enlightening episode of the Leadership Labs podcast. If you found today's episode thought-provoking and informative, be sure to subscribe to the Leadership Labs on your preferred podcast platform or on YouTube. Thank you once again for joining us on this journey through the Leadership Labs. Until next time.